I personally believe this man is the most fascinating mind in this space that I've encountered, and I'm really excited for y'all to get a chance to hear from him. So thank you for being here with us, Fu.
Thank you so much for explaining that. You know, I always hesitate to tell people what I do because on the surface it sounds ludicrous. We're just a bunch of kids sitting in a room in Hawaii that are disrupting the largest, most powerful institutions on the planet. Oh, sorry. So yeah, we're just a bunch of kids in Hawaii who are disrupting the largest, most powerful institutions on the planet to solve the largest, oldest running problem in civilization, which is structural violence. So, you know, the problem has existed as long as there's been writing, because all of our first writing was on ledgers, and at the time we knew that they were pretty imbalanced. So how do you do that? How do you tackle a problem that old and that big and take it seriously? Well, it helps if you have a black swan of innovation, something that allows you to launch distributed applications that nothing on earth can shut down. It's a good start. But you could also start to create economic systems on these distributed applications that allow people to choose to have an opt-in economic system, something that was never possible before. The option to choose what money you use, what medium of transfer you use, one that aligns with your ethos, your philosophy, one that perhaps, hopefully, has an even distribution model, something that you could actually believe in. Because if you don't do that, what you are doing is supporting whatever they do with the economic system that you are part of, which is usually US dollars in my case. And what do they use US dollars for? Does anyone know? Anyone have a clue? Precisely. They printed $17.7 trillion between 2008 and 2012 after the economic crisis. Most of it went to war. And we didn't have a say in that. We're kind of divorced from that process. And sure, we could shake signs at them and say, hey, do something better, do something that's more even, do something that aligns with what we believe in, but that's never going to happen. So the best option is just to create something that competes against it. And once upon a time that was impossible, and it no longer is. So
Speak with the mic closer to your mouth.
Closer to my mouth? Yeah, sorry about that. I could hear it just fine. So yeah, if you launch a distributed application that has a fair distribution model for your economy, what happens? Well, we know that 4.5 billion people live on $2 or less a day. They kind of live outside of the thing that we call the world. And we discovered that if you give them just about $2 or more a day, they suddenly go from very low class to middle class pretty rapidly. So the solution to the largest problem in the world is about $2 a day per person, which is roughly $9 billion a day. And that sounds like a lot, except that the markets we're disrupting are hundreds of trillions of dollars. So all you have to do is unlock the value right where they are. You don't have to give them money. You don't have to give up anything. You simply create a system that unlocks the value where they're sitting, because they have intrinsic value, they have economic value. And the joke there is that if you do that, you'll actually make more money than anything else you could ever dream of, because they do have intrinsic value. And what is the value of including 60% of the human population, 4.5 billion people, in your economic system? Right? How big is your economic system going to be when you involve everyone else in the world in it? The answer is all the money that's ever existed. It's going to be the largest transfer of wealth in human history. And I'm not talking about what's going to happen. I'm talking about what is happening. It's already happened. The future doesn't show up everywhere at once, though. It shows up in a small pocket, and it radiates outwards. I'm fortunate. I live in the future already. All my friends live in the future. My family lives in the future. When I started in this industry, I had $250 to my name and was living on food stamps. Now I'm one of the wealthiest men in my state. I look at my friends and they become wealthy. So that's the power of what happens when you seize control of the money supply, when you stop supporting things that you don't believe in, things that you can't align with. If you simply just shift value, you don't have to take it from them. You simply look in the other direction and say, I believe in this, not that, and that's why I'm going to support it. So there are thousands of options. I actually invite you to make your own. Don't listen to someone else's offer, make your own, right? Because there will be millions when this is all done. And the good news is they're all interoperable. They all work with each other. You don't have to align with one entirely or another one sort of. You could own a spread of them and they'll function just fine. We're building tools that allow you to interact with the existing economic system and they won't even know what you're using. I have a few of them in my pocket right now. Right? So, yes, it's always a difficult thing to have this discussion when someone asks, what do you do? And say, well, we're disrupting the largest, most powerful institutions on the planet. But it's happening. And the good news is it doesn't rely on me or any individual. It's happening globally. There's a million me's, and there'll be a billion soon enough. So, you know, the real question is, what do you align with? Like, if you could design any economic system that had any distribution model, any inflation rate, that focused on solving specific problems, what would they be? What would they be? Seeds. Fantastic. Agriculture. Launch a distributed application that has a token pegged to agriculture, where 10% of the inflation model every year goes specifically to the agriculture industry as a subsidy to allow you to focus on whatever you need, whatever outcomes you're hoping to create there. You can do that like that. You literally do it with your phone. The question is just propagating it, sending the message. And ultimately, I guess that's what stuff like this is about, right? Just having the conversation, getting into the dialogue. But I invite you all to join that fight, to stop supporting the things that you don't align with. It's very easy just to go through life and continue to use the religion or culture of money in this piece of paper that really means nothing to us, as if that's just the way things have always been, right? You were born in US dollars, you were born in your national currency. But now you have a choice. And it's okay if you didn't make the choice before you knew you had a choice, but now you know you have a choice. Right? So now I'm saying you have to choose. You have to choose something that you align with, something that you believe in. And if it doesn't exist, make it, please. I'll buy it too. Just come and tell me about it, right? There's enough money to go around. Coincidentally, when you unlock value, resources suddenly stop being scarce. That's ultimately what we're doing. My company is focused on creating an automated basic income for the world. I have a couple pockets of that happening globally. The next stop is Cambodia. We'll see how it succeeds. It's going to be a slog. It's a big fight. The banks, the media, none of them want to give it up. I mean, if you control the money supply, why would you? Right? I control all of you. Yes, I'll just give it up out of altruism. No, we have to seize the control. You have to take self-determination. You can't ask for it. And the way to do so is to control your medium of transaction. Control your own money supply. Make a choice about how you communicate value in your community. And it could be as small as you and a couple friends, or it could be a distributed nation consisting of millions of people globally. The good news is if you have a message and you have a good ethos, people will show up, which is what I found. When I was building my own company, I didn't ask anybody for anything. They just kept showing up. So I'd invite all of you to come up with some ideas. Imagine the perfect community. Imagine the perfect currency. And if you could imagine it, well, we could build it now, and we could build it in a way where they can't shut it down. So you might want to tell some of us about it. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm sorry? Anatha Technologies. It's actually a series of 18 companies at this point, but yeah, it's Anatha Technologies. Keeps expanding. I'm sorry, what?
So, for someone that maybe doesn't know anything about what you're talking about, where do they start? What's a good starting place?
Well, having a dialogue is the best start. But if you had goods and services, start trading your goods and services for whatever currency you believe in. Right? There's plenty of them out there. I like almost all of them, honestly, because not because they're all great, but because pretty much they're all better than national currency. It's like being the tallest midget. It's not really a big deal, but it's not very hard to be better than national currency. Just buy it if you can, and if you can't buy it, trade your goods and services for it, which it could be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash. I like Dash, Stratus, Lisk, any of them. It doesn't matter. They're all good. It's the top performing asset class in the world for 10 years straight. You're going to hear people talk about volatility, people talk about wild swings. That's a good thing. It's the fastest expanding industry on the planet. It's the top performing asset class for a decade. Anyone who says they have a problem with volatility doesn't understand what volatility really means. It means growth. It means more purchasing power. And also, by the way, national currency is also very volatile. You just peg your goods and services to them so you don't see it. But all of them are moving wildly, constantly, in real time. It's based off of perception, and it's never stable. Nothing in life is stable. All is change. Just accept it and choose one you align with. And a funny thing happens when you start investing in the things you believe in. Other people get scared and exit as soon as they see themselves losing some US dollars, but you stick around because you believe in it. And lo and behold, you flash forward a year or two later, and you're the wealthiest man in your community. Because it pays to be courage, it pays to stick by your guns, it pays to have integrity, it pays to do the right thing. So I just invite you to try to, if you're going to operate in this market, to think about that. Don't buy digital assets or digital tokens because you want to make more money. Buy them because you don't need money anymore. Buy them because we're moving on from the old form of money, which is centralized, central control, a group of people you never met telling you how to live your life, a group of people you have no alignment with philosophically, trying to steer your entire civilization. Don't support that. And you don't have to fight it either. You don't have to be like, well, I want you to stop. Just go, okay, you go ahead and do that. I'm going to do this over here, and we'll compete at market, and we'll see who performs better. And I got to tell you, we've been outperforming them pretty well. Here's the thing. A US dollar is worth less today than it was yesterday, and that statement has been true every day of your life. So if you're talking about volatility or instability, why are you holding one thing that's going down while being scared of the other one that's going up? You know, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's a bit of a mistake. So yeah, that's what we do. We disrupt banks. I go into second and third world countries. I teach them how to build banking systems, and it has some interesting outcomes.
You also manage private digital asset funds. Could you tell us about that?
I do. The thing that makes me the most money is I help people start their own digital asset fund. I started the world's first digital asset fund, which is simply a fund that functions like a hedge fund, only it invests only in digital assets, a full diversified spread. I have the luxury of being an industry insider, so oftentimes I get a phone call from a group of young guys that are going to launch something, and if I think it's cool, I give them a lot of money, and we see where it goes. And where it goes is we have assets that have performed 250,000% in less than a year sometimes. When I say top performing asset class in the world, I don't mean like a little bit better. I mean, we're not even playing the same sport. Me sitting in my room with $250 to my name outperformed every hedge fund on the planet by a factor of 10 for 4 years straight. I taught my mom to do what I do. She's she's like an immigrant. She barely speaks English, and outperforms every hedge fund manager on the planet. People call me up from the legacy financial system. I want you to invest in this thing. I go, well, show me the numbers. Let's talk. There's numbers. There's data. And they go, well, it did 85% last year. I said, I'm going to do 85% by the time this conversation's done. So hurry up. We're in different leagues, and we have about 2 to 3 years of these conditions. So you might want to get involved now while you can. A lot of people think they're late. We're at about 0.2, 0.3% global adoption. Everything before 10% is early adopter phase. So you guys are here, you're listening to me talk, congratulations, you're early. And there's going to be a lot of fear and trepidation, just like there was a lot of fear and trepidation in the adoption of electricity, and there's a lot of fear and trepidation over the adoption of personal computers, but we do it, we don't give it up. This stuff isn't turning around. You can't shut it down. It has huge advantages. Human beings tend not to give up things that offer them a huge advantage in an environment, so it's not going to slow down. So, you know, if you had any doubts before you met me, trust me, give them up. just buy it, sit on it, learn to live on a little bit less, take a little bit of your income and invest it in the digital asset markets. I don't care which one, honestly. It doesn't almost matter because they're all going to outperform national currency. And if you need help with liquidity options, if you're trying to move a lot of money around, come talk to me and I'll show you how to do it. It's usually a few steps.
Could you talk about the elbow curve of adoption?
Yes, the elbow curve of adoption usually happens after 10% global adoption. You'll put on more users in a single year than you did in all the years prior. We're still a ways off from that. However, the adoption curve of this technology is happening faster than past technologies because we don't need to build the infrastructure. If I want to onboard you to the personal computing revolution, you have to buy a piece of machinery and sit it in your house and mess with it and learn how to use it. If I want you to use the internet, you have to, learn a new interface and, mess around and learn that. With this, you just need to download an app. The infrastructure there, the wireless infrastructure there. That's why it's working better in second and third world countries, better than it is in first world countries, because they have the wireless infrastructure. They also have the impetus to use it. I can't show you guys now. I carry around like a $500 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. I usually show that as an example as to why national currencies tend to fail. But in Kenya specifically, they launched something called M-Pesa, which was one of the earliest digital assets. And it was simply a digital token pegged to cell phone minutes. And it sounds silly, but you kind of get an idea of what a cell phone minute's worth, and you start using it in your economy because the national currency, the joke was it was worth less than goat shit because goat shit burned better, right? It had more economic value, they could use it. So it now makes up over 50% of the economy. It raised 194,000 households out of extreme poverty, which is 9% of the population, and it's still going. We don't even know what it did to the middle class because we're so busy studying the lower class, we didn't realize that it was also raising the middle class. So this is what happens when you uncouple from corrupt currency. This is what happens when you look away from centralized currency with unfair distribution. Suddenly the playing field gets a little level, you unlock value right where it's sitting, and people can start to contribute, people can start to self-actualize. And ultimately that's my mission here. It's to make sure that every human being has the opportunity to self-actualize. I'm also here to tell you that that is actually the central problem of humanity. That no matter what problem you think we have, there is nothing that we cannot solve without 4.5 billion people self-actualizing. What problem can stand in the face of that? What problem can we not think a way around with 4.5 billion people suddenly self-actualizing? I mean, short of like vacuum decay or the world suddenly ending, we pretty much got it solved at that point. So I'm just here to invite you to the idea that that is the central problem of our age, and that if we solve it, that we can look back on a day where income inequality, where poverty was like a disease we solved, which is something that we'll never think about again.
Do you have a timeline prediction?
That's more difficult. It's going to be faster than we think. Most of our predictions for pricing or economic growth for this industry usually fall short. We predicted Bitcoin at 5,000 by the end of 2017. Of course, we blew past that. Price is a weak indicator, though. User adoption is actually happening faster and faster. I would say when we're at that elbow curve, past 10% global adoption, and we start to eat away at M1 global money, which is $100 trillion, when we reach those two metrics, we're about 10 to 20 years out from complete disruption. Expect a war, though. When you're choking large, powerful civilizations in a bathtub, expect them to thrash about. Expect them to get mad. Expect them to use every power they can, but also know that that is the best thing that can happen, because if you force a country to print currency to fund its war, the currency turns to dust as they're doing it. And eventually, they can't print enough money to fund the war, and then you end war. Where the next time they want to have a war, they have to come and ask you for it. Since no one can seize a digital asset. No force on earth can censor, seize, or sanction a digital asset if it's in your control. So in other words, if they want to fund the war, they got to ask for permission. And good luck with that. Good luck with that.
A lot of people are confused about what blockchain technology actually is. Could you tell us about it a little bit?
Well, blockchain technology is part of the distributed movement, the decentralization movement, but it's not the only way you could make a decentralized network. Blockchain is simply a consensus algorithm. It's a trust network. It's a way for us to have a third party that isn't human, that we don't know, but that we can implicitly trust. Because it's based off of mathematics, it's based off of algorithms that we could read. We could read the code, we could audit the code. Now, we could get into a technical discussion about the different variants, but we'll be here all week. It's a rather expansive field. What you need to understand is that we're able to create consensus across large economic expanses, large geographic expanses, instantly. We could come to consensus about the state of anything. In this case, money, economics. But that's just the start. You have to start with money. It's the baseline protocol of your civilization. Once you have good money, you can build an entirely new civilization. So all a blockchain is a consensus algorithm. It's a way for us to come to an agreement about the state of things. And in this case, the state of money. Where's the money? Who has it? Who doesn't? What's the inflation model? But there's new ones. There's DAGs. There's, I think someone mentioned hollow chains, side chains. There's a number of ways to create consensus, and we haven't really settled on what the real way to do is. If it is a blockchain, cool. If not, that's okay too. As long as we can verifiably agree that the consensus algorithm is functioning, we can build an entire economic system on top of it. And if you build an entire economic system, congratulations, you get to build a new civilization. And that's ultimately what we're fighting for here. Whoever gets to write the digital token that we use as our currency gets to be the father of the information age in a way that it just couldn't be possible before. The information age has started for our communications network, and it's good if you think of the internet like your nervous system. It's good at sending information. It's very bad at sending resource. If you think of blockchain networks as your circulatory system, suddenly you start to see the human organism. Suddenly you start to see that we could move resource from point A to point B instantly. That's powerful. That's something that wasn't possible before. I mean, the remittance market alone is $500 billion. That's our first target. It's going to go out the window. We're going to eliminate some of the nastiest, largest organizations in the world overnight. But if you want to know what a blockchain is, that's a technical discussion. And honestly, most people don't care about that. They care about the outcomes. Right? And if you want to know about the technical discussion, you can pull me aside later and we can pull it apart all day. But that's a very, very long conversation.
I'm gonna open it up to some questions from the crowd.
I came out of my tent just to ask this, which I think I've heard all of it here, but you're the man. Like, you know your shit, which is great. I just would like you to talk more about like how creating sound money transfers into the benefits for civilization. How you see that? Because it seems profound.
Well, it helps if you understand unsound money first, which is what we have, right? Currently in our economic system, if we say have 9% increased production, they inflate the currency by 12% and then say we have 3% inflation. In other words, they're stealing your productivity. And then they get to choose what projects get funded, which projects don't. They get to choose, you know, if they want to shut something down, by whatever politicians they want. They basically get to steer all of civilization. So the difference between sound money and unsound money is the difference between rulers and no rulers. It's the difference between having a say and not having a say. Sound money, which is money on a set inflation model with a fair distribution system, gives you a say in your civilization again, which is something none of us have ever had. Who here feels involved in what the government does? Who feels they have a say in what their community does, even on a regional level? I spent the past 5 weeks talking to nothing but senators and governors and onboarding them to what they should do or shouldn't do. And I'm here to tell you, they're all clueless. You do not want them running your country. You do not want them running your state. I wouldn't want them running a popsicle stand that I own. So you have to seize control. You have to have self-determination. So ultimately, the difference between sound money and unsound money is the difference between self-determination and having a ruler. But now, what does sound money look like? Well, that's for us to choose. There's lots of different ways to do it, and that's why it's an opt-in system. Sound money means I'm not forcing you to use it, for starters. It means you chose to use it because you agree with it. That's at least one factor of sound money. Another factor would be a fair inflation model, certainly, or no inflation is okay too. A fair distribution system, that is, how is new money that is created distributed to your civilization? Understanding that is a key component. Most of my systems involve spreading that in a sneaky way where I try to give people free value without the company that hired me to do so knowing.
Yeah, you all described it as like a revolution disguised as a get-rich-quick scheme, right?
Certainly, yeah. Well, if you're in this to get rich, coincidentally, if you do the right things, you'll get rich almost as like a side product. The truth is, the natural state of things is abundance. The natural state of things is that we can all have whatever we want whenever we want it. The problem is we've grown up in an unsound system where the distribution model is so skewed and so dramatically, wildly skewed. Well, let's put it this way. There are over $4 quadrillion locked up in the derivatives market alone. What couldn't you solve if you just unlocked $4 quadrillion and poured it into your society? Right? What problem would stand in the face of that? Most people don't even know what a derivative is, and yet it basically runs your life. It controls everything you've ever done. It's a financial instrument that you have most likely don't own any, don't know what it is, and if you saw it, you just shrug your shoulders and keep going. And yet it is the largest economic system on the planet and has controlled every second of your life since before you were born. So the difference between sound money and unsound money, it's a wide range of factors, but ultimately it's the difference between self-determination and having a ruler. And I'm simply suggesting that we seize back our self-determination. Because without self-determination, you can't have self-actualization. Right? I can't force you into self-actualization, right? You have to choose it.
How would you run an Envision token next year?
Rewards token. Make it so that the only way to actually enter is to use your Envision token for starters. That gives it base utility and value. And then make sure that all the vendors are using it. You'd also have to peg it to other currencies, have a big fat ICO, make sure you get a daily trading value. But ultimately, you have to close yourself off to the other economic systems and simply say that in order to participate in this, you have to use sound money, money that we align with, and here's a version of it. I would offer the idea that you want to select a spread of them, but just have Envision be one. Right? And say that we launched our own, here's what it's used for, it gives you access to, like for example, the only way to access VIP or something would be Envision, right? It's utility. At the end of the day, currency is about utility, it's about what you could get for it. And if you simply create things here in this environment that you could get with your token, you have base utility. So just use that. You have something everyone wants apparently, you might as well peg it to something.
Woo! That was good. Thank you.
My question is relating to this shift of currency and like the established infrastructure and transportation is also and like that just seems like a big balance move to shift that and like how we all got here from fossil fuels. How does the new currency fit into that picture?
Well, it fits into the energy industry in a lot of interesting ways. Venezuela's trying to do the petro. Sorry about that. That was my project. I pitched it to someone in Venezuela. Actually, the bondholders asked me to pitch it. I showed it to them, and it went up through every level of government in a few days. And he announced 2 days later that they were going to do the petro, and I was like, "No, you're not." At least he said he was going to do it by February, and I was like, "It's not happening." But how does it peg into the energy industry? Well, we'll have digital assets that are pegged to every commodity on the planet eventually. Does it change the balance of power between people who have lots of energy and people who don't? Not necessarily, but that's why I'm also helping launching renewable energies. There's a company called Revolusun in Hawaii. I'm helping them launch an ICO where it's a token pegged to solar services. So the real answer isn't to try to stop fossil fuels, it's just to make better alternatives. The same thing with bad currency. If currency is bad, make better currency. If energy is bad, make good energy, right? The trick isn't to wrestle with it, though, isn't to try to overcome what they have or somehow disempower them. The key is to empower everyone else. So yes, energy is a tricky problem, and you're going to see a lot of digital assets pegged to different forms of energy we already have. Whether that unlocks value for the user, that remains to be seen. I personally wouldn't invest too heavily in them, though. That's all. Just vote with your dollars, right? If you don't believe in it, just don't vote in it.
How do you see the whole taxes situation playing out with this?
That's an interesting question. Taxes. On all the economic systems I design, there actually are no taxes. I just use a fair inflation model to pay for all government services, but we're not there yet, right? How does taxes play out? Well, in most countries, it's taxed as ordinary income when you convert digital assets to US dollars. Well, I don't do that last part, right? Just don't do that part, just use the other stuff. If you don't convert to fiat currency, you technically have no fiat gains. They'll make some arguments about like-kind exchanges where you trade one token for another token, but it's very hard to track. We're actually making things called decentralized exchanges that they can't force to do anything. So there are ways to operate in such a way where you have no tax footprint. I advise all of you to pay your taxes or get a tax lawyer, but for the most part, if you operate in this space properly, you don't have a tax footprint. So how do you deal with taxes? You just don't have any. You actually have a loss. The IRS treats it as property. So if a digital asset is property, it costs me money to acquire that property. And if I never sell it, well, it's just still sitting there. I haven't made any material gain, therefore I have zero tax liability. It's a neat little trick. I don't know how long it'll hold up, but by the time they actually figure out how to do it, there'll also be other methodologies that you can use to step around it pretty easily.
Could you tell us why you named your company Anatha and how that relates to structural flourishing?
Yes, all right, structural flourishing. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah, if we live in structural violence, I think the solution to it is structural flourishing. But the reason I named my company Anatha, it's short for Anatha Pandika, who was the chief lay disciple of Buddha. And before he met Anatha Pandika, Buddha was just a kind of groovy guy with some friends who walked around and told some nice stories. But he met Anatha Pandika, who was an entrepreneur. And Anatha Pandika met him and was completely blown away and started building businesses and systems that were so beneficial to everyone who interacted with them that it's said that he achieved enlightenment through business practice. So he's kind of an idol for me, someone I look to as a metric for success. But he built all the first meditation parks, he threw all the first Buddhist festivals, so he's kind of like the first PR guy for Buddha. And kind of an important factor, right? Marketing is really important, just so you guys know. If you're launching something, put most of your energy in branding and marketing, you'll be okay. So yeah, Anatha Pandika was, he's just a really groovy guy, someone I really idolize, so I named my company Anatha, short for Anatha Pandika. Pandika will be a bit of a mouthful. But yeah, the funny thing about my company is that I don't feel like I'm running it. I just feel like I'm a spectator in everything that's happening. I just sort of let it happen. And since I've been on that journey and just surrendered to it, my life is transformed in ways that I couldn't even begin to describe. Every time I need something, it simply appears. Every time there's a resource shortage, the resources just show up. It's one of those things. I'm a lifelong atheist. I never believed in anything, but it's enough to make you believe in something. So yeah, Anatha Pandika. If you've never seen him, look him up. He's in the book Art of Power by Thich Nhat Hanh. A really cool book. Anything else? Structural flourishing. Okay, yeah. So if structural violence are systems and organizations that prevent us from self-actualization, how do you beat it? Right? Do you fight it? Do you get a big sign? Do you yell at the guys who built it? Or do you build your own systems that create flourishing? It's kind of like if there's a league of robots attacking you, don't go out and fight them. Build your own robots and let them attack them, right? Build systems that create the outcomes you believe in. The same way they have built systems that create outcomes they like, we can build systems that create outcomes we like. And then at that point, it's simply a question of joining the ones you align with. It's that simple. It's the one time in your life where voting your conscience, doing the most ethical or philosophically sound thing is also the most profitable, coincidentally. So do the right thing and you'll have more spending power than you've ever had in your life. So yeah, systems of structural flourishing are any system that creates, for me it's automated basic income, but any system that facilitates self-actualization. So help me make those, because I'm gonna need some help. Can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Come on up.
Well, you're going to find that decentralized systems, first off, are far more efficient than centralized ones. Nature doesn't do centralization for a reason. Decentralized systems allow for people to operate as nodes and do what's best. So, for example, in your case, something that would pay for taxes, roads. You say the roads are in disrepair, we all need them to be fixed. Well, the bounty to fix that road is going to keep going up depending on how valuable it is to your society. So eventually the person who fixed the road is going to get paid so much to do it that we'll all be fighting to fix that road. Right? So the question is, how valuable is it actually to society? And you're going to find that when people are enriched and actually have capital to spend and time and energy, that we will invest in our communities. We will invest in the people around us. That's ultimately what happens. It becomes decentralized in that I don't need to ask a central organization and pass through tons of bureaucracy to get a pothole fixed. Instead, I have enough money to go, here, I'll give you some money, fix that for me, will you? It's that simple. Here, fix that. It's that simple. If everyone is wealthy, it's not a question, right? Decentralization is far more efficient. Even if you have the smartest, most altruistic leaders in the world, it does not matter. It is too inefficient. They cannot make enough decisions fast enough at high quality to solve all the problems in society, right? So decentralized systems are far more efficient. And if you have a decentralized system that consists of independent actors, people who care about the environment around them, who have capital, energy, time, money, well, yeah, then you just fix the problem yourself. You get together a couple of your friends and say, well, let's put 10% of our income towards creating infrastructure because that infrastructure will pay us back, it makes our lives better, it helps people in some other way, right? One of the ways I do it is I create digital asset funds that don't have a profit motive, that instead focus on a problem. So for me, in that situation, I would simply create a digital asset fund that fixed potholes indefinitely, in perpetuity. So, and then eventually someone will say, well, how much can I get paid to fix the pothole? And you say, well, $5,000 a pothole. 10? Okay, good. You just keep negotiating until it's worth it. But yeah, it's far more efficient, trust me.
Two questions. If you can say something more about your opinion about basic income and your opinion about the pineapple fund, about it.
Oh, what pineapple fund? I've heard that before. Can you refresh my memory?
It's an anonymous donor who donated to charities $86 million in December 2017.
I mean, I think it's cool. Charity's awesome.
Bitcoin, I forgot to say.
Yeah, which is fine. What was the first part of the question?
Your opinion about basic income.
Universal basic income. I'm a huge advocate of universal basic income. I think every human being has intrinsic value, and that ultimately that value supersedes any of their economic value. The question is, how do you unlock it? Well, one of the ways we're doing it in internet information is with the attention economy. The things that you do already on the internet are worth money and pay some of the largest, most profitable companies in existence to do so. Well, just don't give it to them anymore. Create a decentralized autonomous organization that has no profit motive, that uses your attention, monetizes it, and gives it back to you. So universal basic income, again, is the fastest, surest way to solve the problem of income inequality. You got to get the people above that $2 a day line, and once they do, then they'll flush into middle class. It's kind of like how I'm trying to solve homelessness in Hawaii. I'm just going to put them in homes. I'm going to dance around the topic. Oh, you're homeless? Have a home, right? Like, you're poor? Have some money. And then what you'll find is that you'll end up in a high velocity economy, actually giving to the poor. They spend it faster than the rich, so it stimulates your economy. Economy should be bottoms up, not top down. We learned that a long time ago, and we still have this argument about just give the people at the top all the money and they'll fix it. That's not how it works. What you want is a distribution model which starts at the bottom. There's a big argument or a big fear talk going on about automation. People are like, well, there's going to be the haves and have-nots. There'll be people who live above the automation line and people who live below the automation line. So it's a valid fear. My solution to that fear is to take the automation line and put it at the bottom so that no human being lives below it. That's the solution. Sure, automation is coming. Well, let's put it at the bottom then. Why are we leaving people out? And at the end of the day, every person you include in your economic system, every person you give money to and invite into your economic system has value and will contribute value back to your system. And even if you have some the old fears, we'll have some layabouts, they won't do anything, they won't produce anything. 1 in 1,000 will make up for it. One productive human can make up for 1,000 lazy ones, so don't worry about it. Let them sit by the beach and have their days, let that other guy go to work, and at some point in time they'll get bored and they'll go to work too. I was one of them. I stayed on the beach for 3 years in Hawaii, trust me. Eventually you get bored and say, well, I might as well use this for something. I might as well go solve a problem somewhere, all right? So I believe the nature of human beings is productivity. It is to help each other. You simply have to give them the conditions to do so and give them the time to do so as well. And time and money are correlated. If you give people enough money to survive, they'll find themselves, they'll self-actualize. And if one self-actualized human being can change the world, all right? So that's the answer here. It's us. It's awakening everything that's in every one of you. It's not in going out and grabbing some external factor, it's you. So as long as we help each other, the problem will solve itself. And my answer is to use automation to help one another. I help people in my community, I help my family, I help people build businesses, but that's inefficient, it's kind of slow. My answer is to take an automated system that will be global and feed every one of you. You do that, you change the world.
How do we participate with Anatha and what you're creating? Is it investing in digital asset funds, or how do we learn more about your project?
Well, investing in a digital asset fund is certainly convenient for me. It makes me lots of money, right? And it will make you a lot of money too. But starting your own project is more exciting. Investing in other people's projects is great. It's a good starter, and I highly recommend you do it. But if you have an idea for a system, focus on that. Focus on the idea, and then come to me and say, I want to do this idea, and I'll tell you whether it's a good idea or not. But for the most part, we need better ideas. We need contributions. We need people to get involved more than anything. You can't do this alone. It's a movement of people by nature. But yeah, if you're interested in investing in a digital asset fund, come talk to me or someone from my company. We'll chat about it all day. It's kind of boring financial stuff. It also happens to be the top performing asset class in the world, so I don't know how boring that might be. But if you're interested in just exiting the system, though, that's something I could consult with and help you do. Whether or not it benefits me is irrelevant. So yeah, that's what I do.
This is one of the first times he's actually spoke out about any of this. He's pretty private, so make some noise for Fu Manchu, Edward Delion Hickman from Anatha Technologies one more time, y'all. And Fu, we're about to have a panel if you want to stick around. We're about to have a Q&A with the speakers, so I'd like to invite Arcane Bear back up, as well as Paul. And you can also talk to me about digital asset funds and Anatha Technologies. We're collaborating. A bunch of our friends are here. It's a really wildly synchronistic story about the way that I met this man. I bought land next to this guy named Jeff Glazer in Asheville, North Carolina, and him and Fu have been best friends for like 20 years. Fun fact, Fu